I've been doing this for a little over 13 years. And I like to joke that I sucked at it for the first 8 because it was a lot of like banging my head up against the same walls over and over because you hear what you all are in real estate. You come out and what is it? Like do this list, do this list, this list, this thing, that thing, that thing. You're spread so thin across so many things and it's like barely getting by. Like if you break even, you're excited, right? And marketing costs for one point for me, it was up to 45 grand a month, and we were barely breaking 40 grand a month consistently. And I was getting to a point where I was just fried in the business and I was just gonna quit. I was like, I'm tired. Like I worked construction before that. I've been working hard since I dropped out of high school when I was 15. And it was like, I'm just done. Like, I'm so tired of this. It's not moving anywhere. And then I came across a guy in San Antonio that he does highly distressed properties. And he showed me what it was. And I was like, he's like, yeah, on the last deal, we did like 80 grand. I was like, I want to learn that. Like, why aren't people talking about it? And honestly, it's not sexy. Like, I'm going to tell you what it is now, and it's not sexy. I promise you. This is not the stuff that you're going to be flexing on Instagram with. It's a lot of boring work. It just makes a lot of money. So again, figure out where you want to be in this business. So what niche list is, pretty much what it is just going deeper on a list. And the reason why we don't do this is because it's scary. It's scary to go deeper on one list feeling like I will increase my chances if I spread myself thinner. And it doesn't work that way. You understand? I used to do that. I used to do absentees, foreclosures, probates, tax delinquent. I did them all. And right now, all we do in January alone, we did 280 in January off of 3 properties out of 58 leads. That's it. It was a very easy January. You understand? It's not me flexing. I promise you, it's not flexing. This is just because it's that easy when you have just 58 leads that you can put all your effort behind. We spent $2,200 a month to run our business. That's it. That's all I spent. That's marketing, systems, everything we use, and the VA that we hire. And the VA, all they do is run our list and pull our lists. So it's very lean, it's very targeted, it's very focused. What you got to do is just have the confidence to niche down on a list, specialize on a list, and stop chasing every shiny penny you see. Oh, what about novations or MLS deals or all this? I get it. They're all sexy, but none of them are going to make you as much money as going direct to seller. When you go direct to seller, you're able to negotiate better. You're able to connect with these people at a deeper level. You're able to find the real reasons for selling. Why do they need to sell, not just want to sell? And this starts with the list. So what I wanted to do is actually share with you. This is something that I just share usually with my mastermind. This is what we do, right? So let's say pre-foreclosures. This is the list that we focus on in San Antonio. So we do pre-foreclosures. We do 10 plus years of deed of trust. Why do we do 10 plus years? Is any properties that was purchased 10 years or more ago, there's going to be a higher likelihood it has equity. So we're filtering the list down already a lot. We only want institutional lenders. I don't want LLCs, trusts, or anything like that because they're a pain in the butt to deal with. I got to get my attorney involved, send demand letters. They're not fun. They're not easy to deal with. I want the original loan amount to not be higher than the median price plus 20%. Why do I do this? San Antonio right now has 8 months of inventory. For those of you that don't know why this matters, we take the median price and we go up 20% and everything below that. That is demand in the market. I know any property I get at that price point or below, it's making money right away. That's where the market is telling me they want properties at. So what I do is I supply the demand that's in the market. I don't try to force the market into what I do. Like, where's the demand in your market? Supply it. That's it. Simple economics. The problem is we get a little too fancy with real estate. So we do this with pre-foreclosures. So for example, on Thursdays in Texas, you get a massive influx of foreclosures that get dropped into the county records, right? So when that happens, out of 60 in San Antonio, we probably qualify about 20 that are the ones that we would chase after. Now, here's what's crazier. We are even niching down further than that even now because we looked at the last 18 deals that we did, and 9 out of 10 of them all came from deceased owners. So that means the person was deceased, so we were dealing with heirs. Now, why is this important? Most people don't know how to deal with heirship issues. We do. I've specialized. I can't do this if I'm doing foreclosures, absentees, divorce, pay per click, pay per lead, and all the other nonsense that's out there. If I do all of those things, I can't specialize on one thing. But because I only do foreclosures, I know this process inside and out. I know how to buy partial interest. I know how to close outside of title. I know how to do very creative things that most people do not know how to do. This is what allows me to make a lot of money on this. All right. So with this, we've even gone up to 12 years of deed of trust and more. Why not 15? We tried 15. It was too much. 12 years is our sweet spot, right? So that's how we niche down the pre-foreclosure list. Pre-probates, we look for single families, median price of 20 plus, but that's just the basics, right? For pre-probates. And I'm going to show you like absentees, we look at 10 years of ownership or more. These we pull out of DealMachine. So we do 10 plus years of ownership from last deed transfer, owns 5 houses or less, appraised value. I like appraised value over like calculated value just because I want the appraisal. I don't want, whatever the calculations are. I do square footage. This stuff, the square footage year built comes from my buyers. This is the criteria my buyers want. I don't market to anything I don't have a buyer for. It makes no sense. Because if I get a deal outside of this criteria, who do I sell it to? You understand? It just doesn't make sense. So I have my buyer's criteria. That's where this comes from. Ownership, absentee or out of state, no LLCs and no trust, and not on the MLS. Then what you do with a list like this, you can start stacking this. So with a probate, the same thing. Can I get a pre-probate that has 10 years of ownership, right? The person that passed away meets all these criterias. But on top of that, what if it also has code violations? On top of that, what if it's also tax delinquent? Now, my pre probate list for the week went from 200 to 8. How expensive is it for me to market to those 8 properties? Very, very inexpensive. That's why my marketing budget is so low. I don't need to do anything crazy to go after 8 properties. And I know a lot of people are like, what do you do with the rest of your day? Right? And it's like the rest of the day I spend on figuring out how can I get more detailed with my list? How can I get a little bit more niche down with my list? Right. And pre-probates, you can also do regular just probates. So pre-probate is somebody just passed away and the probate process hasn't even started. In Texas, I like doing that. I also have a business partner in St. Louis. In St. Louis, this is harder because you can't do that affidavit of heirships until a person has been dead for more than a year. So in Texas, we can do that as soon as somebody dies. So what that means is we can bypass the probate process. So when we bypass the probate process, we become that much more easier to deal with. All right. So these are all types of ways that you want to narrow down and you want to go lower. And like I said, in January, it was just 58 leads. All right. We don't do that many. And now with this new criteria of going just after deceased people, we looked at the January list and that was going to go down to 18. But what do I care if I'm closing $280,000 a month? Like, you see why we don't go after volume, we go after quality. It's the quality of the list that matters. It's not the volume. It's not how many leads. Everybody gets so fixated on hitting so many leads. And it's like when you hit so many leads, you can't specialize on anything. You understand? You're spread way too thin. And then when you get a seller, what ends up happening? The seller gives you the slightest objection, and you move on to the next one because your goal is not to close deals. Your goal is to call as many people as you can. That's the wrong goal to have. I teach all my students the same thing, right, Andy? Like when you get somebody on the phone, your world shuts down. That's it. Your whole attention is on that one person. How do you solve their problem? How do you ask better questions? How do you dig deeper? Like when you specialize, now all of a sudden, when you do cold calling, which is what we prefer to do, it's we're not getting in trouble with anybody because I'm calling 4 or 5 properties. I'm calling 50 properties a month. The people that you hear always talking nonsense about cold calling are the ones that are calling thousands of properties a month. And they're spamming the hell out of so many people. And they got VAs and they got their VAs calling thousands of properties. So all they're doing is just pissing everybody off, right? We don't do that. We go after a very targeted, very niche list. So out of this, what I love about the absentee list, I like forming every list out of the absentee list. When I start with this, this is the non-negotiable for my list. Now I'll add, are there any absentee properties that are also an expired listing? Because that means they're absentee, they meet my criteria, and they were trying to sell, but it didn't move. Okay, let me look at it. If I pull those pictures up and I see that house is ugly or it's dated and stuff, then obviously this person has some form of problem that they can't get the price that they're needing. But it could be a problem I can solve. You understand? Like the goal with us is not to close a lot of deals, but to solve very big problems. The bigger the problem, the more money you're going to make. This problem that we solved, that we just closed a deal, we made 130 on. And that deal, the homeowner, everybody else, he's like, but everybody tells me I'm underwater because he has a lot of judgments on him. We're like, yes, technically you are. But we know that those judgments are not attached to the house. So I know how to close that property outside of title, clean up the judgments, and then do another closing, and then everything is taken care of. And it goes from a deal that everybody thinks is underwater to a deal that just made us 130 grand. You understand? And it wasn't hard for me, but it was hard for my competition. These big wholesale companies, your Net Westerns and all these other guys, like they can't compete with what we do because they can't hire the specialized knowledge that it takes to go deep on a list. And the people that are higher up that might have the skills don't want to do this. So I don't compete with them. When people say there's a lot of competition, not for me. I'm in San Antonio. There's over 2 million people in San Antonio. There's a lot of people doing marketing, a lot of people going after the foreclosure list. The foreclosure list is one of the easiest lists to get in Texas. Yet I make multiple six figures just on this list every single month. It's how niche can you get on this? How much deeper can you dig on this? When you do this correctly in your market, and I'm not saying you all should do foreclosures. Everybody's like, oh, let me do foreclosures because Sean's killing it. No, it's not for everybody. Foreclosures, it's a special kind of seller. And not everybody can deal with that kind of seller. They're very emotional. It's a lot of situations going on. Not everybody can handle a foreclosure. You understand? But you can do this with anything. You get an absentee that's an expired listing, or you get an absentee that's tax delinquent, or it has code violation, or has a dismissed bankruptcy. All of a sudden, guys, you got yourself a list of maybe 5 properties, 6 properties. Now get creative. How are you going to get after it? Even if you're going to do direct mail, I got 5 properties to send mail to. You better believe I'm not sending a letter. I'll send them a package. I'll send them a nice little care package. I'll send them something that they got to sign for. But it doesn't cost me much. It's only 5 people. This is how you become a lot more laser focused. So what we call this, and my coach calls this, is he calls it spear fishing. Instead of throwing a massive net into the water and coming back with a bunch of dirty diapers, like you get into the water and you find that fish that you want and you go after it. Because when you start pulling a list like this, let's call it like a pre-probate or a probate list, right? And you pull the list, you pull the owner, you skip trace them, nobody answers. What do? You move on. No. What we do is we get into the obituaries. Who are their surviving heirs? Now we find the surviving heirs and we skip trace their heirs. Now I'm trying to find who else has a claim to this property. Because when you find an heir that lives in California and the property's in St. Louis, we come across this a lot. They don't give a damn about the house in St. Louis. What do? I buy their interest in the house. I'm like, hey, I'm gonna send you over some documents. If I give you $1,000, would you sign this over to me so I can take care of it? Sure. I don't want anything to do with this. Got it. Now I just got ownership stake in a property that's worth 200 grand, 300 grand, and it cost me $1,000. This is what niching down allows you to do. Now, how do we skip trace? One of the sources I like, I know DealMachine offers skip tracing. Just hit those with DealMachine, hit those numbers. But if you don't get any results, then you got to go deeper. It's the more you specialize on a list and on a niche, the more you're going to be able to understand it better, right? And you're going to understand how deep do you have to go, how much do you have to chase. Everybody out there, your surface level, right? First few numbers don't answer or whatever, move on to the next, on to the next, on to the next. That's what everybody else is doing. What I do is like, oh, they're not working. Let's go. Now I get excited. Now I adjust my chair because it's like, I know 80% of the people going after this lead just moved on. My competition went to nothing at that point. And if this lead has some serious problems, they can't solve those.
Thanks for listening to the DealMachine Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please leave us a review and follow along wherever you're listening to your podcast.